Hello Gaudi class and welcome to today's PHSE lesson. For this lesson you're going to need a paper and pencil and some colouring pencils if you have them, but you won't need those till the end of the lesson. But you will need a partner. So if you haven't got a grown-up around, then get yourself a cuddly toy. Today I have got Mr. Monkey come to join me. We're going to be looking at what you do to keep yourself safe and what you can do if you don't feel safe. So I'm going to ask you two questions that we're going to think about throughout today's lesson. And at the end of the lesson, we're going to come back and see if we know the answers. So what do we do to keep ourselves safe? And what do we do if we don't feel safe? So those are the two questions that we're going to be thinking at throughout today's lesson. So keeping safe is very important. Sometimes we might worry about doing something or be nervous about it, but we still know that it is safe. And other times we might feel that doing it's going to be dangerous and we get hurt, so we don't want to do it. So have a look at this picture. Is this safe? So turn to your toy and pause the video if you need to have a bit of a chat with your toy. Do you think that that's a safe picture? Mr. Monkey says that that's not safe. He's cycling very fast. He hasn't got a helmet on, which would keep him safe if he was fast. And he's wearing flip-flops or sandals, so he might get his toes caught or the bottom of his shoe caught. So if there's nothing wrong with riding a bike, as long as you wear your helmet and you make sure that you cycle on a sensible cycle path and wear sensible shoes. So is this safe? Again, touch your partner. Mr. Monkey says that this one is safe. He says, although the little girl hasn't got any swimming armbands on, she is with an adult who's looking after her. So you wouldn't wear armbands unless you were a very good swimmer, and you wouldn't swim in a pool unless there was a lifeguard to watch you or an adult with you to look after you. Is this safe? Now, this is a tricky one. It might not make you feel safe, but actually it is safe. It's not okay for you to do on your own, and you would have to be harnessed in. So the people on these treetop walk have got nets all around them and they've got harnesses on, so they're attached to something. But it is safe to do. It might make you feel afraid and you might not want to do it in year 2, but as you get older, it might be something you want to do. But it is totally safe to do. You wouldn't just go out and climb a tree. That's not so safe. But this is go ape, and you might want to do that when you're older. Is this safe? Mr. Monkey says this one is not safe. He says the children are playing in the road, and that's not a very good place to play. So we have rules to keep us safe. And if we follow the rules, then we help look after ourselves. So again, I told you you're going to need to do a lot of talking today. I want you to think about the rules we have at school. So you might want to pause the video a minute and just think. Don't want you to write anything down yet. Just have a think in your head. What rules do we have at school? We ask you not to run around the classroom because you might hurt yourself. We ask you to wash your hands to keep yourself safe and not from clear. Oh, try again, Mrs. Gabella. And free from germs. We ask you not to shout in the classroom or call out in lessons. One of the reasons for this is that if somebody did get hurt, then they could call out and we'd know it had happened. If everyone is making a lot of noise, then we can't hear if somebody really needs our help. So can you think of other rules that I didn't think of? What rules do you have at home? And this might be different depending on where you live. So again, maybe you need to pause the video and talk to somebody about the rules you have at home. We have rules such as you don't run with sharp knives in your hands. And actually, when my children were little, they weren't allowed to touch the sharp knives. Now that they're older, they are allowed to. Again, when my children were little, they weren't allowed to cook or help us cook unless there was an adult around to help. Now that they're older, they're allowed to do that on their own. You might have ones about running up and down stairs. Or our one at the moment is you're not allowed to have your phone on, or you're not allowed to be looking at your phone when you're walking up and down stairs because you might trip. So you're allowed your phone because my children are teenagers and they can use them upstairs, they can use them downstairs, but not while they're moving. We also have one about not having phones at meal tables or when we're watching a movie, because that's just rude, but that doesn't keep them safe. It just stops them from having mummy or daddy shout at them, which I guess in a way is keeping them safe. What other rules do you have at home? And what about when you're out and about with your family? What rules do you have? Again, you might want to pause the video to talk about that. So we have rules like always make sure a grown-up can see you. Tell a grown-up where you're going. Let us know where you're going. If you want to walk on ahead or you want to go off on your own, that's fine, as long as you tell me where you're going and where you're going to stop and where we're going to meet if we get lost. That was always a very, very important one as my children got older, for them to say, I'm just going to walk up here, but I'll meet you here. And if we ever went shopping and they went off to get something, we would always stay where we were so that they could come back to us, so we didn't move on, so that they didn't get lost. So if they wanted to go off and get something, they could do that and we'd stay where we were until they came back. You might have rules about holding hands when you cross the road, making sure that there's a grown-up and crossing in a sensible place. So think about the rules that you have. Everyone has different rules. So we might not always like the rules or think that they're fair, but they're there for a reason. So it is important that we follow them. Some rules stop us doing things until we're old enough. So for example, you can't learn to drive a car until you're 17. And you might think that that's not a fair rule because you want to drive a car, but actually it would be very difficult because you're not tall enough yet or old enough to understand how the rules of the road work. And there are lots and lots of rules you have to learn when you want to drive a car. You can't have your own credit card until you're 18. So that might be because you don't earn any money and you don't have any money. And if you started spending money, then you'd owe people a lot of money and they'd be very upset with you. And you're not allowed to leave school until you're 16. You're not allowed to actually leave education until you're 18, but you don't have to stay at school to do that. You can get an apprenticeship or go to college, but you have to stay at school until you're 16. Or not on your 16th birthday. You can't leave on your 16th birthday. You have to stay until you've done your GCSEs at the end of year 11. It's okay to say no if someone asks you to do something that makes you feel unsafe, but it's also important that you tell someone why you feel that way. So for example, if you go back to the Go Ape one, you might say, no, I don't want to do that. But if I explain to you that you're strapped in and that there are nets and that you can't go without an adult to supervise you, you might still be a bit scared, but you might feel that actually you were willing to have a go. So I could explain to you what it is that you're nervous about. And so you would feel that you weren't in danger. You'd still be a bit anxious, a bit worried, but you'd know that you weren't going to fall out the trees and break your legs. So it's important that if you're asked to do something that you are worried about, you tell somebody that you're worried so that they can explain to you what's going to happen. So before we start our task, I just want you to think about the questions I asked you at the beginning of the lesson. What do we do to keep ourselves safe? And what do we do if we don't feel safe? So to keep ourselves safe, we follow the rules. And as long as we're following the rules, then we'll be the best that we can be, or be the safest that we can be. And if we don't feel safe, we need to talk to someone about it. And last week we were talking about our superhero and who we talk to if we're worried. So that's the person that you would talk to if you were feeling unsafe. So when we're out and about, you might have seen some of these. There are signs to help us stay safe. These are called warning signs. So what do you notice about all these signs? Probably notice that they're in a red triangle. So this one's just a warning. This one tells you that there is a crossing up ahead for people, that if you're driving along, there's a crossing ahead. People might be crossing the road, so slow down to take that into account. This tells you that there's a roundabout coming up. So again, you slow down if you're in the car. This tells you that there are children, or not children, there's people crossing. It's normally a school. It's a school crossing ahead. And this tells you that there are workmen. So they all give you warning of what might be coming up ahead. So you can think, oh, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm safe? Pardon me, excuse me. I'm safe and they're safe. So that's your task for today. The first part's nice and easy. You're going to draw a warning sign to tell someone about a danger that you could find at home, school, or out and about. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to draw a big red triangle. And I'm hoping you've got colour pencils. If you haven't, then it's going to have to be a big black triangle, and that's absolutely fine. Then you're going to draw something inside the triangle that you need to be careful of. So on this one, I've drawn a pair of scissors. So it could be a hot oven, it could be wires from a computer. I wouldn't show you my floor, but my floor is full of wires here because I've got everything plugged in. It could be tables in our classroom that you might run into if you're not careful and looking where you're going. It could be pieces on the floor, paper on the floor that you might trip over. It could be words that Mrs. Gabella cannot get out of her mouth this morning. I'm so sorry. It might be cars on the road or strangers if you're out and about with your family. So once you've drawn your big red triangle and you've drawn inside it what it is that you're warning people about, I just want one sentence that tells me what it is you've drawn. So be careful with sharp scissors because you might cut yourself. And that is your job for today. So one big red triangle with something that we need to be careful of and an explanation of what it is. And I look forward to seeing your pictures on Tapestry.